This isn't the final product yet. This is just a visual revamp of version 1. What I changed from version 1 was now we're dealing with 2 tables instead of 1. Before, 1 table, if you would scroll down, this whole top row up here would scroll with it. So the save button would scroll and the titles for the day of the week would scroll as well. Well, the kind of messed up thing about that is once you start moving down quite a ways down the page, in order for you to save whatever it is you type down here, you have to scroll all the way back up because the save button had to be located before you could click it and save your data. So having it in a section that's of fixed positioning allows you to go however far down you need to scroll and then type in your data. It lets you hit the save button readily instead of scrolling to get to it. So that was one improvement that I did to that. Another thing I did had to do with the coloring of the text area. So I created a class called Alt, short for alternating. You can call it anything you want. You can call it gray since it happens to give this a gray background. I created a class called Highlight, which you can call it anything you want. You could call it Payday, you could call it Lime. I called it Highlight, and that stands for every payday to have a lime background. And then, so for every text area that needs to be gray for the pay period, I had to manually copy and paste class equals alt, class equals alt, class equals alt for all of these text areas until we got to payday, and then I said class equals highlight. Then I went back to class equals alt, class equals alt, class equals alt, class equals alt, class equals alt. Then when I get to the 18th, I don't give it a class at all because I want it to maintain its default white background that it had when I first created this web page. And I did that for January 18th all the way to, what is this, January 30th? How many days are in January? I know that's awful. 31st. Okay, so this would have been January 31st. That text area had no class. But when we got to February 1st, we gave it class alt again. So manually had to put all these classes for all these text areas, which again is redundant repeating code. And once we get our final version, we won't have all that copy and paste mess. We'll have nice JavaScript for loops that'll use if conditions and create our display that way. In the meantime, let's look at the old-fashioned redundant code. This is just a revamp of version 1. Here's the style. And to make this video quick, I'm just going to highlight this, pause, copy, and then play. This is how you rotate the text using class diag. In a previous video I called it .z, class Z, but this makes more sense because it reminds me that it's a shortened form of the word diagonal, so it's going to remind me what it's doing when I look at the code in the HTML file. Moving on to the next, this is for the text area. This is how we're going to stylize the text areas. And then finally we have our buttons. Save button is visible. The remove button you can't see, so you don't even have to use the remove button code if you don't want a remove button. But if you do, you can use it. And the last 2 things are those classes I told you about. .highlight has a background color of lime, and .alt has a background color of #999, which gives us that gray background. Alright, so that finishes up with the CSS. Now let's look at the very simple JavaScript that pertains to local storage. You have to have save my stuff and load my stuff. If you're not going to use a remove button, you don't need the remove my stuff function. So this can be even simpler for you. This is the save my stuff portion that will save your key value pair for next time you visit the browser page. Next, we have the load my stuff function right here that will, as soon as you come back the next day or the next week, and the body on load calls this load my stuff function. If anything was saved into local storage before, it's going to pull that up so that you don't lose that information, and you'll see it again. Now, if you do decide you want a remove my stuff button or remove button to remove everything with one single click, then this would be the code for that function. Alright, with that being said, let's get rid of this bulldozer.js external JavaScript, and let's look at this long-winded HTML file that we will improve by the time we're done with this whole version iteration mess. So from line 1 to line 17, what you have is a few links that point to outside files in the head tag. After that, you've got your opening body tag, which again, you have your onload event set to load my stuff. After that, you have a div with an ID of heading, followed by a table with the class of header. What we have in here is our first row here that doesn't move because we've set it to a fixed position. So that's our save button and our little days of the week here that have diagonal styles for Sunday through Saturday. Alright, that's what that is. So here you got your input button. Here's another button, but I have it disabled, and it's also hidden, so you can't even see that remove button. And after that, we have all those table headers that inside of divs with class set to diag, Sun, Muntu, Wen, Thur, Fri, and Sat are all set in this diagonal div right there that we've stylized. Alright, so then you end that top table and you end the div. Now let's move down to the second table. This second table has a class set to content, and this is where all of our redundant copy and pasted code went. It starts from line 30, goes all the way to line 2051. I will go over the first two rows of this, and the rest you can figure out by the pattern. First table row tag. In the header, we have a number 1 because this is going to represent week 1 of the year 2018. The first table data cell has a text area. It's got a unique ID because if you don't use a unique ID for every element that's going to be accessed by local storage, you're going to mess up your code. So whether you call this ID job 1, ID day 1, or just ID 1, that's completely up to you, but every ID for every text area has to be unique. Placeholder is set to the date because that's what I want to show inside the text area. This is December 31st of 2017, and I don't care about 2017, so I've disabled that text area so the user can't click in that text area and type anything. They can't. They can try to click in there, but it won't do anything. And so that you close up the text area, close up that table data cell. The next table data cell has ID of job 2 and placeholder of January 1st, 2018. Close that up, go to the next table data cell, text area, ID is job 3, placeholder is January 2nd. Close it up, next one, text area has ID of job 4, placeholder of January 3rd. Close it up, go to the next one. Here's where we're going to use a class because we want the background color to be different. So for this one, we have text area class equals alt. That's going to give this text area background color of what I say, pound 999, which is a type of gray. ID job 5, placeholder equals 1/4/4, which represents January 4th. And for 14 days, from January 4th, for 14 days, a 2-week pay period, we want to give 14 of those text areas the class of alt. So here's the end of the table row. We went over from 12/31/17 to January 6th. I'm going to look at the second row only because you're going to see where the payday comes in. Alright, so here's the second table row. And the TH tags, we have a number 2 because we want this to represent week 2 of the year. Here's our table data cell with the text area. Nothing unique, same old stuff. Table data cell text area, 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 and this is the new one. Table data cell text area. Now we have a class equal to highlight because the style for .highlight is background set to lime. So now we get to see where payday is. And all of this is manually done, manually coded, so it's kind of a pain in the butt. So the more we get acquainted with JavaScript functions, and the happier we're going to be about doing this. The ideas job 13, the placeholder is different because I wanted the date, which is 1/12, to be on one line of this text area. I wanted 0 hours to be on the next line, 0 gross on the next line, and 0 net on the next line. And I couldn't do it with \n, and I couldn't do it with a break tag. So I had to irritatingly take the and NBSP semicolon, which is going to give us a space, and do repeating spaces over and over and over, and then look at how the output was by refreshing the page until I seen 0 hours move down to the next line. And then I'd have to do the same thing until I seen 0 gross move down to the next line. And the same thing until 0 net moved to the next line. So that's what all this and NBSP semicolon junk is for. I'm trying to force my output. All right, so there's the end of that text area, the end of the table data cell. And I really don't have to show you all of the rest of this, because you could look at the pattern and copy and paste what you need to and make alterations on an as-needed basis. This is the last table data cell of that row with that text area, the ending TR for the ending table row. So I've went over the change in one table to two tables, the top table having a fixed position so it doesn't scroll. I've went over the next two rows in the second table. I've showed you how to colorize the style so that you can have a gray background and a lime background. And then of course, for all the things that you want to have just your default white background, you don't need to give it a special class at all. All right, with that being said, all of that repetition goes on until we get to our very last, where is it? Our very last text table data cell, our last table row tag, our ending table tag, our ending body, and our ending HTML. So just wanted to show you a few design changes that I made in the visual output. But this, I might have maybe 2 or 3 iterations before I get my final product with less redundant code. I might even make some other visual changes that I think will make this look prettier. And in the meantime, I'm going to cut this video short and move on to the next, whatever it is I want to fiddle with.